So how did you do on the exercises from the last lesson? If you didn't do too well, or you couldn't do them at all, don't worry too much about it. Just keep reviewing the video and trying to do the exercises, reviewing the correct answers. You'll get the hang of it. I mentioned in the last video that we're going to start with the verbs of motion. So today we're going to look at idти, hadit, jechad, and jezdit. Now, if you remember, I mentioned previously that Russian verbs of motion are more complicated than other Russian verbs, but I didn't say why. Well, here's the reason. Russian verbs of motion have two imperfective forms. One form is used for a trip where the subject has gone but not come back, while the other form is used for a complete trip. Of course, there are other uses of these forms, which we'll get into in a moment. But we're going to look specifically at these four verbs, idти, hadit, and jechad, jezdit. Because if you understand how these pairs of verbs work, then you will have no problems understanding how to properly use the other verbs of motion. So first let's look at their conjugations. You can see that I've marked the stress for you, and you should also notice that hadit is a stress-changing verb. The first verb in these pairs, idti and jechad, are determinate verbs, while the second verb in these pairs, hadit, jezdit, are indeterminate verbs. Determinate verbs indicate motions in a definite direction taking place at a given time. It is sometimes helpful to think of them in the context of being on the way. Indeterminate verbs describe locomotion in general, without reference to progress in any particular direction, or motion in a definite direction when it is repeated or habitual. Also, in the past tense, it can describe a completed round trip. So here are some examples to help illustrate these concepts.
Сейчас я иду в институт. Сейчас мы едем в институт.
These sentences describe a present action. It is still in progress, and there is a definite direction the subject is going in, with a definite goal to reach.
Я каждый день хожу в институт. Мы каждый день ездим в институт.
These sentences describe a regular action of going and coming. The subject makes completed trips as a habit.
Мой друг любит ездить на машине. Вы каждый год ездите на юг? Когда вы едете в Китай? Я шел в кино пешком. Мы ехали быстро. Я ходил в кино вчера. Мы ездили в Киев в январе. Мы много раз ездили в Киев.
Now it's time for you to try an exercise. Remember to pause the video, complete the exercise, and then resume the video and I'll give you the correct answers so you can check your work. In the next video, we're going to talk about perfective forms, so stay tuned.